Hello everyone. I'm coming to talk about lies, truth and the ego because I posted something about this a couple of days ago and there seemed to be an interest in the topic, but also because I have just heard someone say on a spiritual podcast that they believed that lying affected one's intuition, and I'm just open to exploring this idea. I'm not saying it's my truth, I don't know yet, but I want to talk about truth, lying and the ego for sure. Now, I want you to know that I haven't scripted this video at all, so it might be a bit messy and all over the place, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on the subject because I think lying is a big subject. And there's a lot of spiritual teachers out there who tell you that lying is wrong. And I don't believe in right or wrong, personally. I think everything is a situational thing. And if your intent comes from the right place, then even lying could be okay. But that's my personal opinion. I don't ask anyone to believe in my opinion or agree with me. As I said on my post in the group, I respect everyone's opinion. I was raised in a culture that considered lying wrong, to be punished, especially in children. Interestingly enough, adults lied all the time and they were never punished for it in my household. So there was this dichotomy between what I was asked, the standard that was applied to me as a child, and the standard that my own mother applied to herself, which was to lie whenever she wanted. And she was actually the biggest liar I have ever met in my life. Now, I know this statement might be shocking for you, and you might not believe me, and you might think that I'm ungrateful to my mother. She's my mother after all. All this, you might judge me, you might not. It doesn't matter to me in a sense, because I know what I know, and I had the childhood that I had. And I've actually been in therapy for over 10 years over my relationship with my mum. I had to put supervision when my kids went to my mum for several years. And I've also had to cut ties with her twice. And the last time I've done it was 2.5 years ago. I don't see this as changing, even though I'm open to possibilities. I can see someone's watching, so if you want to say hello, please comment below and let me know where you're watching from. So I was just explaining for the person who's just joined that in my childhood there was a double standard around lying, in the fact that if I was caught lying I would get punished severely, whereas I caught adults lying all the time and they never got punished for it. And already that made me a little bit, how can I say that? That made me a tiny bit skeptical around the kind of ethics that governed our world, especially the adult world. Now, I will say that it's very hard for me to lie, and it makes me very uncomfortable. And it's not something I do lightly. Hi, Tanya, so good to see you. Thank you for waving and saying hi. So I will say that lying is not something that comes naturally to me. I don't like lying, and I lie as little as possible, including with my children. Very early on, as when I became a mother, when my elder were little, they're now in their 20s. How did that happen? I don't know. When they were little, if I was sad, I would tell my kids that I was sad, because I thought it was important to be congruent with them, so that if they felt that I was sad and I was going to tell them that I wasn't sad, then that wasn't good for them, because that means that I would deny their intuition. I would deny their intelligence. And I wasn't prepared to do that. I wasn't prepared to mess them up at that level by denying the truth that they were feeling. And I kept to that for a very long time. For me, living by my truth was really important. Now, in my 20s, I had a sort of awakening. At the time, I was a student in law and languages, but I also went to therapy. And it was very important for me to go to therapy. Actually, it might have been towards maybe a bit later than that, maybe after I was a student. I don't know. Anyway, it was in Paris. Rue de Vaugirard to be precise, and this man sadly was hit, who was on a motorcycle, was hit by a car, a hit and run. And so he was on the floor, and there was all these people around him trying to help him. And you know how it is when someone's injured and there's a crowd that gathers. I've never liked that. It's always made me uncomfortable. So I stayed at a distance, knowing that someone had called the emergency service and they were waiting for them to come, and everything was in hand. I can see someone else watching. Please say hello if you are, so I know who's watching and where you're watching from. And so I looked at this man. Obviously, I was very distressed because I can feel people's pain, so it was difficult. But I tried to center myself because I was having this awakening. And what I was realizing, I was actually on my way to a therapy session with my therapist that I had gone to when I was 9 years old. So I started therapy pretty young for... Well, I don't know. Yeah, I think 9 is young. So I was on my way to my therapist. Hi, Stephanie. So good to see you. I miss you. And I looked at this man lying on the ground. I didn't know if he was dead or just mildly injured. Everybody was on hyper alert. People were feeling stressed about looking at him on the ground. And I became aware, something in maybe it was my higher self. I have no idea. But what I was shown that every single person in that incident, if they were interviewed by the police, for example, would give a different account of the situation. Because I was aware that physically first, we were in different spots, so we could see different things. I was quite remote, so I didn't know if he was actually still breathing or whether it was worse. But also emotionally, everybody was looking at the situation with the length of their beliefs, their emotions, whatever had happened that day, whatever they had for breakfast that day would have influenced and impacted them on how they perceived the situation. And this was a very, very strong awakening for me, because I was raised by a woman who believed there was only one truth, hers in particular. And so for me, it never sat right, but I was a child. I had... Up to a certain level, I didn't have a choice but to be raised by a woman who believed she was the only person who was right and who always criticized everyone else, especially behind their back. And I'm only mentioning her not because I'm vindictive and I want you to know how much I hate my mother. I don't hate my mother. I don't love her either at this point, I think. I'm not entirely sure. But she's been a great teacher for me. She's been an immense teacher because she told me so many valuable lessons, including one about lies. And I can tell you one thing about my mum, who was, as I mentioned earlier, was the biggest liar I have ever met. She believed her lies, okay? She really believed her lies. Now, she was able to lie to me, to my face, about situations that other people had witnessed, but my brother and sister were too scared, or even my dad were too scared to say anything because she was very domineering, let's put it that way. She was also gaslighting me, but that's another story. So I remember a particular instance where we went for her birthday for a meal at a nice fine dining restaurant, because my dad loved to treat us to fine dining for birthdays. And she attacked me at the dinner table, by saying something pretty offensive. And I couldn't tell you today what it was, but it was very offensive because she liked to do that. And she knew nobody would say anything because it was her birthday and we were at the table, and my brother and sister and dad would always sort of, how can I say, they didn't speak up to her. They didn't stand up to her. I was the only one who did. So, of course, it made it more fun for her to target me with her attacks. It was more interesting for her. So here we were in this fine dining restaurant, and my mother says something pretty horrific to me in front of my dad, sister, and brother. And I respond because I have this survival instinct, and I don't think my mother should say that to me. I am a teenager. I don't have a driver's license, so I can't leave actually the restaurant, but I'm not going to let her walk all over me in front of my family. And it doesn't really matter if it's in front of my family. I'm not going to let my mother walk all over me like she did my entire childhood. I'm a teen now, or a young adult, and I'm standing up for her, against her, not for her. I don't know how to say that in English, but you get the idea. And of course, because I responded to her, she then immediately turned to my dad and say, look at her, she's ruining my birthday, and starting to make it all about me and how mean I am and how disgusting I am and how ungrateful I am and how, these teenagers are awful and blah, 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 blah. And at that point, we hadn't had dinner yet even. We just had put the order through. I just walked away. There was a little garden surrounding the restaurant. I just walked away and I thought, I don't care if I don't have any dinner. I don't care if I don't get to go home at this point. I don't care about anything. I just have to walk away from the situation. Now I'm going to take this back. I told you it was going to be a little bit messy. I talk about truth, lies, and the ego. I believe my mother's ego, she believed everything her ego told her because she had no training, no awareness of how the mind works, okay? And so she always said, and her mother said the same. I can see someone else joined. Please say hello when you do. I'm going to change hands to relax my hand a little bit. And my grandmother was a bit the same. She believed everything she thought. She believed her thoughts. And if you disagreed with her, it was a personal attack. Now, we know better now. And I certainly know better now that I have trained in clinical hypnotherapy, that there's two parts of us. There's one part which comes from the reptile brain that likes to lie to us, but to protect us. So it pretends that maybe the world is a dangerous place because it wants us to be on alert to make sure nothing bad happens to us, even though it might be an imaginary threat. And there's times when our ego, our reptile brain, is really good and really needed because we might be in real danger. For example, if we're in a domestic violence situation and we need to walk away from it, then our ego is really our friend. But because the ego cannot make the difference between a real danger and an imagined danger, we have to be careful about our ego. And I guess the realization I've had in the past few weeks is that we're more prone to lying if we believe our ego. So we need to understand what the ego does and what our higher self does and how to access each of them. Now, ego loves fear. Ego loves doubt. Ego loves any sort of negative feelings. So the more we indulge in these feelings, the more we are going to be prone to be drawn into that energy. Does that make sense? Now, how does that tie with what I wanted to say about lying? I think for me, there are 50 shades of lying, okay? That's a bit what I wanted to say. There's the really small lies that we do, what do you do with a lie? That we indulge in, maybe? Because we want to protect someone out of love. So it could be a lie like you don't tell your grandmother that she has terminal cancer because she doesn't really need to know and that would upset her, whereas she can just die from it without knowing what's going on. That's a lie that you make from love. There can be lies that are stemming from fear. For example, you are in an abusive relationship or with someone very controlling and you're afraid to tell them the truth because if you do, you fear that your safety will be at risk, whether it's your emotional safety, your mental safety, or your physical safety. And if that's the case, you really need to make sure that you're safe and maybe leave the relationship. But that's for another discussion altogether. Sometimes lying, you're put in a position where you're almost obliged to lie. And I've been in these situations, I've been reflecting a lot on it because, as I said at the start of this video, I'm not comfortable lying, but I felt that I needed to lie in certain situations. And I'm taking full responsibility for it. I'm not blaming the person that put me in that situation because I always had a choice whether to lie or not to lie, okay? But I want to go back as well to the beginning of my Facebook Live where I said that I was raised in a culture of blame around lying. And that didn't help. And also of double standards because my parents were lying. My dad much less than my mum. But socially we lie all the time. We lie sometimes when we hide parts of ourselves, or sometimes we lie to ourselves as well. Hi, Shireen. Nice to see you here. And I don't know where this is leading me, but I'm interested to talk about this because of this episode in this podcast, a spiritual podcast, that said that lying affects intuition. And I think to a certain extent, it depends what kind of lies. But at the same time, I have a feeling that the more we lie in small and big ways, the more it compromises our energy. And that feels right to me. It might not feel right to you, and I completely respect you if you... But I'm not coming at it from a religious sort of attitude to it, or cultural attitude to it of it's wrong to lie, because I don't believe in right and wrong. I really don't. And I also don't believe in a culture of blame. I believe in a culture of full responsibility, full integrity, and full authenticity. And obviously, because of that, I know now that I want to make the effort to be completely authentic as much as I can in every day, in all my interactions. And I would say it's been hard in a way, because thank you for all the hearts and the hugs. I'd never thought that talking about lying would get me to get hearts, but I'm loving it. So what I want to say is... What do I want to say about this? I think I want to commit personally to radical truth and honesty. Not just in my private life, but in my business as well. And in order to do that, I need to say that I have lied and I have done some things that I'm not proud of. As I said earlier, in some instances, I felt that I was cornered and I had no choice but to lie. And I was reflecting on why did I attract these situations to my life, and what would it take for it to change. And I think that I'm at the point in my life where I'm coming to the zero tolerance for lying for myself. I will not impose it to anyone. Like, considering I come from having been raised by a woman who lied through her teeth her entire life, it's been a journey for me with this. It has really been a journey. I've had to hide entire parts of myself to her, for example. So when you hide some parts of yourself, is that lying? I don't know. But I want to approach this subject with the compassion that it needs, and with the absence of judgment that it needs. Because I know too well from my life experience how easy it is to be put in a position where you have to lie. And usually it's by people who demand the truth from you, but you know that if you're going to share the truth with them, they're going to attack you. And I've lived that almost my entire life, thanks to my mother and other people that have come into my life. And I'm grateful to them. I'm grateful to them because they taught me so much about truth and lying. But I'd like to invite all of you to pursue your truth. And as I started this video in a certain way by, this experience I had on this street in Rue de Vaugirard in Paris, where I saw this poor man on the ground, and everybody having a completely different perspective on what was happening to him. I want you to understand that we each have our own truth, and it's just as valid as anybody else. At the same time, we have a responsibility to peel off the layers of conditioning that lead us to see things in a certain way that might be compromised by lies that have been told to us and that have become our truth. Does that make any sense, what I'm saying? I'm feeling like I'm getting into almost esoteric grounds about lying. So although I feel that, the truth has always been bandied and talked about as the ultimate, goal, in a way, I can look at it from my Catholic background, my Catholic education, where the very people who demanded the truth and who judged people for lying in church were the biggest liars, because I've found out so many things about the Catholic faith that is absolutely disgusting. They were the biggest two-faced, religion that I've ever seen in action. And I guess because I am a free spirit and I actually don't belong to any religion, probably because I was burned by Catholicism in my youth and in my family as well, to a certain extent, although my mum wasn't Catholic. But she certainly espoused some of the black and white thinking that came with it. I just want to bring maybe a breath of fresh air into this whole, the truth, the lies, and the ego conversation. So let's see, I could just see a comment by Stephanie. She says, it makes sense to me. I hold my own truth gently because I know that as I learn more of it changes. And that's exactly where I wanted to get next, is that our truth evolves in time. I'm not the same person I was when I was in my 20s. I don't hold the same truths. Life has shaped me. I have learned so much from everything and every experience that I've been through. And that includes a lot of experience around truth and lying. So I'm so grateful to have been presented all these situations, sometimes challenging, sometimes not, so that I can deepen my understanding. And I come to lies with a lot of compassion. But at the same time, I can feel how lying can be soul destroying. And I'm not prepared to compromise my truth anymore, if that makes any sense. I'd love to have any comments that you have, any questions, any feedback. I have a few more minutes before I get out of my car and get into the blistering wind and rain and cold of this British May weather. I would lie if I'd say I love it. Although I'm okay with a little bit of rain and wind. It does blow the cobwebs, so that's okay. Thank you so much for all of you who've come live to listen to me. I really appreciate you. And I'd love to continue the conversation around this and maybe have more discussions around the things that matter to us in this community. And I had a feeling after my post about lying a couple of days ago that this was something that mattered to people and that you wanted to explore more. And I want to finish this Facebook Live by telling you that I am more than happy to answer anyone's questions with what my guides tell me about topics, okay, that I should be sharing. Anytime, and all you need to do is just ask the question and tag me on it, okay? That's how I'd like this group to grow and evolve. I'm much better at answering someone's question that they really feel strongly about, rather than me just coming and teaching you stuff that you don't really care about, okay? Bearing in mind that, I'm a business intuition mentor, so that's my main offering, but I'm also, as you know, a Reiki master, and I know that I'm here to bring more spirituality into the business world. So that's something I feel very passionate about. Thank you, Shireen, for the flowers. Thank you so much. I'm going to wish you a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you're at or whenever you're watching it. And I'll come into the group soon. Oh, before I go, I do want to mention that I have a wonderful webinar coming up on Monday, 10 a.m. UK time, to tell you the 4 steps on how to connect to your intuition on demand. Bye everyone. I hope you sign up, and I'll share the link underneath this video. Bye for now.